In the heart of every institution stands a visionary, an institution builder who has nurtured the organization into an institution. India has seen several brilliant institution builders. Dr. Vikram Sarabhai developed India's space program and made significant contributions to various fields ranging from atomic energy and scientific research to management education and performing arts. Dr. Bhabha was able to put India on the world map of atomic energy within a short period of 5 years. In the recent years, we have had Dr. V. Kurian, who fathered the cooperative movement in India and spearheaded the White Revolution. An institution performs functions and services that are valued in society. It has an internal structure that protects commonly held norms and values. Therefore, an institution adapts over time to changing societal needs and pressures. It has a clear mission that is accepted within and outside the institution. In this film, we introduce you to two such institution builders, Professor G. Ram Reddy in the field of education and Mr. P.S. Deodhar in the field of electronics. They share with you their experiences in institution building. Professor G. Ram Reddy, born in Karimnagar, Andhra Pradesh in 1929, has been in the field of education for over 30 years. He has been associated with a number of organizations, most of them new. He was the Vice-Chancellor of Osmania University, one of India's leading universities from 1977 to 1982. Thereafter, he took over as the Vice-Chancellor of the Andhra Pradesh Open University, the first open university in India. In 1985, Professor Reddy, the pioneer of open university education, became the founding Vice-Chancellor of the Indira Gandhi National Open University.
My observations are based mainly on my experience of these two universities, the Andhra Pradesh Open University and the National Open University. When I reflect on this, I find that political support is of utmost importance for an organization to become an institution. Without full political support, new institutions, new organizations like open universities simply cannot survive, cannot flourish. The second important factor is the legal framework. What type of legal framework is devised for these organizations? If the legal framework is conducive, then these organizations can work very well. Otherwise, they will be stifled. Third to my mind is the leadership. Some organizations are lucky to get proper leaders. Some are not so lucky. If an organization gets a dynamic leader who has a vision, leader who knows his mind, who knows where he would take that institution, then that organization would work very well, and in no time it can develop into an institution.
The institution builder has to identify various problems facing the organization. One of his guiding principles would be his faith and trust in his team workers. Mr. P.S. Deodhar was born in Pune in 1934. In 1962, Mr. Deodhar founded AppLab to design and manufacture electronic test and measuring equipment and power systems. In 1984, Mr. Deodhar was invited by the government to take over as honorary part-time chairman of ET&T, a public sector corporation under the Department of Electronics. In November 1986, Mr. P.S. Deodhar was appointed chairman of Electronics Commission. In March 1988, he proposed a new comprehensive electronics policy based on socio-political and technical objectives. Mr. Deodhar is currently advisor to the Government of India on use of electronics and informatic media for formal and non-formal education.
When I started a company, I had the confidence in me that there are certain things which were being needed by the people and which were not being produced in the country. And I was quite confident that I could do it myself with the help of. Initially, in fact, I suggested it to the people for whom I was working that I would like to produce these products as a part of their institution. So really I was never driven to set up a company merely to start something and have a personal income which is larger than when I was working for the government or research institution then. And therefore, the whole driving force behind was I can do it. And then we got into it. Now, interesting part was that we started with almost no capital. And therefore, the entire growth of the company in the initial period, in those days we did not have the kind of assistance that the banks give today to a private small company. So we decided one thing, that whatever resources we create, all of them go back into growth. In fact, we did not even think of it as growth. We only thought that our resource needs have to be fulfilled out of whatever money we make. And therefore, automatically whatever that came gave us, in a sense, a larger and larger opportunity to try out bigger and bigger things. And it is the customers, it is the bold customers, I would say, who helped us to grow. And we work sincerely to give them what they want. And therefore, it was a very rewarding experience, because almost every day we were doing something new, contributing something, and we had an extraordinary support from the people.
In the case of IGNOU, there were no commercial considerations. Furthermore, IGNOU was the first of its kind in India. It was therefore left to Professor Reddy and his team to define the mission of IGNOU.
In an organization like this, an open university which is new, there are no precedents. One has to take a balanced view. On the one hand, you have to look at the goals, which are different from the goals of conventional university. At the same time, you have to look at the existing structures of universities. In the case of the National Open University, we have to match these two. Now, our objectives are different. We spelled out our objectives. But then we felt that the structure should be so devised that they would be able to realize these goals. The National Open University is a central university. Therefore, people expect that it would be like any other central university, like the JNU, Delhi University, or Aligarh. So when we were preparing the bill, we had to bear these things in mind. On the one side, we have to be innovative. On the other side, it should be similar to other central universities. We have made a couple of innovations in this organization. For instance, the head of the university is the visitor. Next to him in most central universities is the chancellor. We felt the chancellor had no role to play in a university of this type. Similarly, we felt that court had no place in a university of this type. So we dispensed with these two. Similarly, our requirements were different. We therefore said that we would have regional organizations. We made provision for regional centers and study centers. Even with regard to the recruitment of staff, we made departures from the established systems. For instance, we made provision for the appointment of consultants. We made provision for short-term appointments, which many universities don't do. But for us, it is a requirement. So in a public organization, we have to bear these two things in mind. We should not be very much different, but at the same time, the structure should be such that it would help you in realizing the goals.
Having defined the objectives, it is important that they are communicated to all employees. This not only gives them a sense of participation in the organization activities, but also ensures that the entire organization is moving towards a common goal. An organization requires a set of systems and structure, or, in other words, a framework within which it functions. How do these work in a new organization? When Mr. Deodhar set up AppLab, it was essentially a one-man show. He did not impose any structure on it. Let us see how the structure and systems were allowed to develop.
You start any new institution, it starts as a small core group. And therefore, the relationship between the people is fairly informal. It does not have any organized, shape that you would like to see in a large organization. So the rules and regulations for an organization really evolve with its growth to manage that growth. And until and unless you ensure that there is this natural evolution of rules of the game, as I might call them, within the organization, you will find that the rules can hurt the organization. In our case, precisely the same thing happened. When we were a very small company, there is a tremendous informality, and that informality has certain advantages in that when you are of that size. Firstly, everybody does any job that comes to him. So one tends to be a packer, a deliverer, a service engineer, a designer, all rolled into one. But gradually as you grow, these roles starts getting more and more specialized, and the quantum of work that one has to do really needs to get divided.
A leader has to possess risk-taking ability. He should also not be strictly bound by rules and regulations. In situations where these hinder the efficient working of the organization, he should be prepared to take liberties, within legal limits, of course.
You can't manage a new organization without taking risks. Sometimes you have to pay the price, but risk has to be taken. Otherwise, you would waste a lot of time. Let me give you one or two instances. The university came into being in September 1985, and the Board of Management was constituted by the government in December 1986. Strictly speaking, we could not have made any major appointments till the Board of Management met. But if I had waited till the constitution of the Board of Management, we would have lost 1 year. As a result, I made use of certain emergency powers and recruited the initial staff, some of them on a 2-year, 3-year contract, some others on a short-term contract, which were eventually approved by the Board of Management. But recruitment of this staff was absolutely necessary for me if we had to plan our programs. As a result, we were able to produce our first courses in management and distance education by January, February 1987, which, but by any yardstick, is an important achievement. In about a year to 14 months, we produced these programs. Therefore, one has to take certain amount of risk in all these things. As long as one is convinced that he is doing the right thing, maybe he is taking a little liberty with the rules, I think the leader has nothing to worry.
Professor Reddy had to set up systems and procedures right from scratch for IGNOU. On the other hand, at ET&T, Mr. Deodhar had to tackle the situation in a sick public sector unit. He started by analyzing the problems at ET&T and arriving at a suitable solution.
The most important strength that any company can hope to have is its people, the people who work for the company, because those are the people, those are the resources which are available best to any institution. And anybody who is responsible for managing an institution cannot escape carrying the last man with him. And I found that one of the major reasons for the institutional failure then was a tremendous amount of distrust and infighting which was there within the organization. And what needed to be done was really to reinstate, to give back that trust to them in their own abilities, their own desire to look at their institution as their own and spare no efforts to revive it. So very simple things like going and talking to people, spending time with the last man in the organization, doing things which will almost set an example for them. I found, for instance, there was a fair amount of administrative interference in the organizational day-to-day management. And the first thing that I could do was to stop that interference. Then give a program to the company, a program which they can manage within their own abilities.
He believes that the most important asset of any organization is its employees. He therefore devised a plan that was based on the existing strength of ET&T, that is, its people. The vision and direction he gave to ET&T revived it.
There was no point in thinking of a project to, for instance, manufacture TV set. They would not have been able to manage that because it's not a manufacturing organization. So we said that why not turn this? Now if it is a government owned industrial company, I felt that it cannot become like any other private company. It must be bigger than any industrial company and yet must do techno-commercial functions. And there I took a decision to shape that organization as a catalyst. Now I realized that there are several functions which a small company cannot do, and that really differentiates small company from a large company. What are those three functions? They don't invest enough in R&D, and therefore the product that they have access to essentially does not have a matching technology which will enable them to survive in the competitive world. So I said, let us give first of all technology free of charge to these companies of making a good quality television set. Then we said that another thing that a small company cannot do is to buy effectively, because their volumes are small, they are not really the masters when they go to suppliers to buy. So we decided to do the bulk purchase of all the parts and become a big buyer, and therefore give an advantage of bulk buying. Third thing that a small company cannot afford, unfortunately, is to advertise, because advertisement costs are high. You have to do it fairly expensively through mass media. And moment you get involved into advertising and you want to distribute those advertisement costs over a small quantum of production that a small company has, then the cost of advertising per unit is also very high. So I said, let's take on the advertising, which essentially meant giving them a brand name support. Like somebody would have got a brand name of Sony, he would sell the sets because brand name carried some importance. So I said, let's evolve ET&T as a brand name and let people work with that brand name. So we did not join a manufacturing organization. We could not ever be compared even with a large television manufacturer, because we were doing something which was far more important than even a large television manufacturing company.
The organization looks to its leader to provide the direction that takes it towards its goals. This requires a careful study of the strengths and weaknesses of the organization. Another critical function of the leader is to develop his subordinates to take over the mantle of leadership once he is no longer in the scene. Only this will ensure that the institution survives beyond its builder.
There are leaders who would like to go strictly according to the rules. There are leaders who would observe the rules but take certain amount of risk. I would call them the dynamic leaders. Then there are very weak leaders who would not produce any results. They are there. Then finally, there are the narcissists who admire themselves. They don't see any good in others. These are the various types of leaders. But the best one, to my mind, is that leadership which knows what goals the organization ought to be achieving. So you have to trust your people. You take all precautions in selecting your key men and women. Once you select them, you have got to give them freedom and autonomy. Sometimes one gets disappointment in this, but by and large, I think it would work very well. You know, Indian organizations are like the Indian families. Here, the head of the organization is like the head of the family. So that's very important. He provides the direction to the organization.
Whenever government has identified talent and bet its money on that particular person, on a projects which were initiated by him, like in case of Dr. Bhabha, who gave us the atomic energy program, of which we are all proud of, or Dr. Sarabhai, whom again Mrs. Gandhi trusted and gave him the free hand to set up the space program. Now, how it was nucleated. Somebody desired that we should import an Earth station for satellite reception. And when Dr. Sarabhai said, in PRL, we would like to make an attempt and make it ourselves. And that's how your entire space program nucleated around him. And that success of Sarabhai, that success of Bhabha, we have not learned from. After that, we have not built institutions around talents which are available in the country. And that's the reason why you find that we do not see in recent past any outstanding work being done, certainly not cost effectively. The institution must, for an initial period of time, carry a personality of its promoter. And this is a very important thing. And if you try to distort that, then you will not be able to create a successful institution.
While we can certainly learn from Western experiences, it is necessary for us to look at the models of institutions existing in our own country. Mr. Deodhar comments.
We have this British legacy where the decision goes from top to bottom, whereas in countries like Japan, the decision comes from bottom to top. In a sense, essentially the ideas are conceived at the top, but then they are tested, put to debate within the organization at the lowest end, and get committed people at the lowest end to say, yes, this is what our company should do. And once you do that, then the organization essentially flourishes, because it is everybody's cause, not just the chief executive's cause. And I think we should not overlook this aspect. And we see in India also the same thing will happen. I mean, you look at Excel Industries, which is run by Shroffs, or you look at Tisco, which is run by Tatas, an organization where for last 40 years they never had any strike, and everybody worked for the cause of the company.
और प्लांट ने तो मेरा मन ही जीत लिया। इंडियन मैनेजमेंट सेंटर अपने आप में एक अलग दुनिया थी। कठिन परिश्रम था, साथ था दोस्ताना और अपनापन, और आखिर में कामयाबी का वो क्षण। हम उन्नति के साधन बनाते हैं, इस बात भी हम बनाते हैं।
Like their advertisement said, incidentally they also do some production and produce some things. Now it implies that your basic objective in running an institution is growth of the people who work for that institution. And any chief executive who overlooks this very essential foundation of an organizational management never succeeds.
Old organizations in the private sector often die if they are not functioning effectively. This, however, does not hold for those in the public sector.
In the growth of all organizations, there are a number of stages. In the case of private organizations, there is the youth, there is the childhood, youth, old age, and death. If they don't perform, they die. In the case of public organizations, there are only 3 stages: childhood, youth, then the old age. Public organizations never die. So they remain alive, but they are like paralytic patients. If they don't become organizations, they exist but don't perform. They don't die because oxygen is supplied by the government from time to time. Therefore, every organization should aim at becoming an institution.
I have made this statement quite often that government has not played a good owner. It needs to improve its role as owner. Then the things will fall in line.
There are old and new organizations. Old organizations are like old men and women, 80-year-old, 70-year-old men and women. There it is a question of maintenance. Old men and women all the time are worried about their blood pressure, diabetes, ulcer and whatnot. Occasionally they may need medical help. Whereas new organizations are like small children, small babies. The way you bring up your babies, you have to bring up the new organizations.
Let us now recapitulate the experiences on building institutions. An institution must have a vision, which translates into a mission for the organization. The heart of the institution building process is the leadership, and the most important resource of the organization is its people. The environment, the prevailing social ethos, and the leader determine the values that guide the organization. The direction the organization takes is dependent on the organization's mission and the values which guide it. The organization has a framework of systems and structures within which it operates. An organization with these characteristics, and where all these components function cohesively, taking the organization towards its mission, becomes an institution.